Hi. Today I want to talk about one of the smartest things I've ever done as a teacher, but it was really against instinct. I'd never seen this kind of decision modeled before, but I'm so glad I tried it. I teach a summer intensive. It's super fun. I've got a schedule that I love. If you are interested in starting a ballet summer intensive, send me an email and I will happily share the schedule with you. It's really fun. It's 6 hours of instruction time, and then there's a 30 to 45-minute meal break in there. By the way, if you can get the families to do potlucks for those meals, it ends up being like a really cool community team building thing too. It's a really fun intensive, and I do an intermediate division and an advanced division. Part of the intensive is Move Method classes. I'm not particularly affiliated with Move Method, except that I'm certified. They don't know that I'm out here saying nice things about them, but it is a yoga / science-based approach to stretching. It is super efficient. I am not a naturally flexible person, and I, as a middle-aged person, have gotten more flexible since I started doing this. So if I can do it, anyone can do it. Some days we start with Move Method, which is great because it opens up everything and we can get into those really fine-tuning muscles really, really well. And some days we end with Move Method, which is great because it also is a really nice recovery class. There's a lot of relaxation, a lot of deep breathing. So I alternate. Like Monday, Wednesday, we'll start with it. Tuesday, Thursday, we end with it. And then Friday is a parent demo day. Part of the Move Method methodology is that you need to be very focused and relaxed. So if you're talking to your neighbors, the method is not as effective because part of it is training your nervous system that this greater range of motion is safe so that it doesn't So the first year that I did it, I noticed that I felt like I was always telling my intermediate kids to stop talking. Anytime I do Move Method for the first time with a group, we talk about the stretch reflex and we talk about how your breath can trigger your vagus nerve to kind of just calm down. We talk about the importance of focus. We talk about the importance of paying attention to your alignment to get the most effective stretch. So I knew that the kids already understood why it was important to not talk, but understanding why didn't seem to help. That first year, I just spent so much time shushing people. Only in the intermediate division. In the advanced division, it didn't seem to be a problem. So I came back for the second year to do it, and I was paying more attention, and I noticed that I didn't have the chatty problem when Move Method was the first class of the day, but I had the problem when it was the last class of the day. And I started just noticing who specifically was it, because it didn't matter where these kids put their yoga mats. It didn't matter who they were next to. They were going to chat with anybody, which really should have been my first clue. So I start paying attention to who are my talkers and what do they have in common. Surprise! They're extroverts. Extroverts gain energy by talking and interacting with other people. And these were young kids, like 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, right in that age. That's still pretty young. They'd been dancing at that point for 5 hours. They were tired. They weren't talking because they were trying to be disrespectful. They weren't talking because they were bored. They were talking because they were tired. And they needed to re-energize so that they could focus and be successful. But we were in kind of a double bind. They needed to socially interact in order to have the energy to be successful in the class. But the class structure needed them to be quiet so that we could all have the alpha wave relaxation that we needed to have, and also the self-awareness and the self-focus. So it was a little bit lose-lose. As soon as I figured out what was going on, after the dinner break, I just sat down with all of the students. I didn't single anybody out. And I just, I was like, hey, are we all familiar with extroverts and introverts? And they were like, yes. And I'm like, hey, and also ambiverts, you could kind of be like a mix. That one doesn't get as much attention. I don't think there are very many ambiverts in the world, but I did marry one, so I know they're real. Like unicorns. Oh, like unicorns. My husband's grandma made this for me. What a fun little non sequitur. Everybody knows what an extrovert and an introvert is. I was like, do you happen to know which one you think you might be? And the kids all have a pretty good idea. And I was like, great, that's awesome. So those of you that are extroverts, you might be having trouble focusing when we do our move method class last because you're tired. And I didn't ask for like a raise of hands. I didn't ask for a show, but when people know that, when they're like, oh yeah, that resonates. I told the kids that I was going to offer them the option to discuss with their parents and leave early if they wanted, which like blew their minds. Because we focus in dance class, we talk so much about consistency, attendance, you need to be in class, you need to be working, da 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 da. And I had just said, if it makes sense for you, go home early. This wouldn't work during a school year. You can't let someone go home early twice a week. Like you can't do that. But if you're doing a 2-week summer intensive, you definitely can, especially where it was only Tuesday, Thursday. And I told them they didn't need to make like an overarching decision for the whole intensive. They could take it day by day if they wanted. But go home, talk it over with their parents. Just know that it's an option. If they were to the point where they knew they were going to be talking, they were welcome to go home. No judgment. I also made it really clear, I take attendance at the beginning of the day. I do not take attendance 6 times in 6 hours. So like, this wasn't going to, like, there was going to be no record of this. It was just, if this is the right choice for you, it's an option. And they took me up on it. No, it wasn't usually the same people every single time. I don't think I've ever had, because this is how I offer this intensive now. I don't think I've ever had anyone opt out of the class every time. Like, they must be just self-evaluating. Can I do this today? Is this the right choice for me today? And then if it's not, they leave. So this is how it's played out. My people who leave sometimes are still keeping pace with their progress and their improvement. Letting people go when it is the right choice for them doesn't tank their progress, which is awesome. By letting people have the freedom to kind of opt out if they know that they're going to be a distraction to their neighbor, that made teaching the class so much easier because all of a sudden I wasn't shushing anyone, which really just validated my theory that nobody was doing it because they were bored. Nobody was doing it to be disrespectful. It was literally an energy mismatch situation. And I noticed that those kids who occasionally opted out, their stamina by the end of the week was better. It turns out when you respect people's like recharging methods, really cool things happen. So yes, 10 out of 10, I would recommend it. It is how I teach this intensive whenever I get a chance to do it, because I have found it is the best choice for extroverted kids. And then as they are older, I think the reason I don't have to do this with advanced kids is because they have learned other ways to energize and they have more stamina. But especially when it's their first or second year in a summer intensive, I mean, they're still kids. Again, obviously, we can't use this method during the school year. Trying it over the summer and having really good results has helped me like plant in my brain this idea that when people are misbehaving, like take a generous interpretation of that because it's not usually personal. And this has also kind of opened up my mind to just, are there little tweaks that I can make for people on a particular day? If I have an introvert who seems really overwhelmed, I can just kind of slide up to them at a bar and be like, do you want to go splash some cold water on your face and take a minute? Because that can reset some stuff for people. And if I've got a class where my extroverts are kind of starting to bounce off the wall, I can take a few minutes and do some peer feedback where we are still productive, we are still working towards the lesson plan goals, but they're doing it in a more social way. And then they have the energy to refocus. And I get to teach things my way for the rest of the time. So that's just one way that we can make small tweaks to help our classrooms be more accessible and our students be more successful. If you're interested in teaching tips, I have a blog on my website, geekyballerina.com. I also have a monthly newsletter where I integrate a teaching tip with an element of artistry. I also have lesson plans. I have a curriculum that I've developed. You can find me there. As always, I hope you have a really great class.